Most people will forget 70% of everything they learn within 24 hours. Not because they are lazy, not because they are unintelligent, but because nobody ever taught them how their own brain actually works. And once you understand what is really happening inside your memory, everything changes. In the next 10 minutes, you are going to discover the exact science behind why your brain forgets, which techniques are proven to dramatically slow that process down, and the one counterintuitive method that feels completely wrong at first but produces better long-term memory than almost anything else researchers have ever tested. Stay with us, because this last one will genuinely change the way you study and learn forever. Memory is not a single thing. That is the first misunderstanding most people carry through their entire lives. When scientists talk about memory, they are really talking about a complex system with multiple distinct components, each governed by different brain regions and different biological processes. Understanding this architecture is the foundation of everything that follows. Your brain processes incoming information through what researchers call working memory, sometimes referred to as short-term memory. Think of it as a mental whiteboard. It holds information temporarily while you use it, but it has a sharply limited capacity. Psychologist George Miller famously described this limit as 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information. More recent research has revised that number down even further, suggesting the true limit may be closer to 4 distinct units at any given moment. For a memory to survive, it must transfer from working memory into long-term storage. This process is called memory consolidation, and it happens primarily during sleep, specifically during slow-wave and REM sleep cycles. This is why pulling an all-nighter before an exam is one of the worst strategies neuroscience can possibly imagine. You are literally depriving your brain of the window it needs to lock information in place. Hermann Ebbinghaus was a German psychologist who, in the 1880s, conducted some of the earliest and most important memory experiments ever performed. He memorized thousands of meaningless syllable lists and then tested himself at regular intervals. What he discovered became known as the forgetting curve, and its implications are staggering. Without any intervention, humans forget approximately 40% of new information within 20 minutes. By the end of the first day, that number reaches 70%. After a week, we have lost roughly 90% of what we originally encoded. These numbers are not estimates. They are documented, replicated, and widely accepted across modern cognitive science. But here's what nobody talks about. Ebbinghaus also discovered the solution buried inside his own data, and yet for over a century, educators largely ignored it. The solution is called spaced repetition. Rather than reviewing information once in a single long session, you review it at carefully timed intervals that grow progressively longer. You might review new material after 1 day, then 3 days later, then a week after that, then a month later. Each time you successfully retrieve the information, the memory trace in your brain strengthens and the forgetting curve becomes less steep. Research published in the journal Psychological Science found that students who used spaced repetition outperformed cramming students by up to 200% on long-term retention tests. The evidence is overwhelming. The technique is underused. Closely related to spaced repetition is a practice called retrieval practice, or the testing effect. This is where we encounter the counterintuitive insight promised at the beginning. Most people believe that the act of studying, reading, and reviewing information is what builds memory. But cognitive psychologist Henry Roediger at Washington University has spent decades proving something different. The act of retrieving information, of pulling it out of your memory rather than reading it, again, is what actually strengthens the neural pathway. Struggling to remember something, even if you initially fail, produces stronger encoding than effortless rereading every single time. A landmark study published in Science in 2011 found that students who took practice tests after reading a passage retained 50% more information 1 week later compared to students who simply reread the passage or used concept mapping. 50% more. From changing one habit. So how do you apply retrieval practice in real life? Close your notes after reading a section and write down everything you can remember. Use flashcards, but never look at the answer until after you have genuinely attempted to recall it. Quiz yourself out loud while driving or walking. The discomfort you feel when you cannot immediately remember something is not a sign of failure. It is literally the sensation of your brain building a stronger memory. Now let us talk about something that sits at the intersection of biology and behavior. Sleep. We mentioned it briefly, but it deserves far more attention because the research here is extraordinary. During deep sleep, your hippocampus, the brain region most responsible for forming new memories, systematically replays the experiences of the day and transfers them into the cortex for long-term storage. Matthew Walker, neuroscientist and author of the landmark book Why We Sleep, describes sleep as the single most effective thing a human being can do to reset brain health and enhance memory function. Studies from Harvard Medical School have shown that people who sleep for 8 hours after learning new material retain nearly twice as much information as those who sleep for only 6 hours. And it is not just quantity. A short afternoon nap of just 90 minutes has been shown to produce memory retention improvements comparable to a full night of sleep for certain types of learning. Your brain is not resting during sleep. It is working harder than ever, filing, organizing, and cementing everything you experienced while awake. What about physical exercise? Here is another area where the science surprises almost everyone. Aerobic exercise triggers the release of a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, often abbreviated as BDNF. Researchers sometimes call BDNF Miracle-Gro for the brain, and that nickname is not an exaggeration. BDNF promotes the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus, strengthens synaptic connections, and significantly enhances the brain's capacity to form and retain new memories. A study conducted at the University of British Columbia found that regular aerobic exercise increased the size of the hippocampus by approximately 2% in older adults, effectively reversing age-related memory decline by 1 to 2 years. You do not need to run a marathon. 30 minutes of brisk walking, 5 days a week, is enough to produce measurable cognitive benefits according to current research guidelines. Stress is memory's most persistent enemy, and this relationship is one that most productivity culture refuses to acknowledge honestly. When you are chronically stressed, your body floods itself with cortisol. In short bursts, cortisol can actually sharpen focus and enhance memory encoding of emotionally significant events. But sustained high cortisol levels actively damage the hippocampus over time, literally shrinking the very structure your brain depends on for memory formation. This is why finding sustainable stress management strategies is not a luxury. It is a neurological necessity. Mindfulness meditation has emerged as one of the most rigorously studied interventions for reducing cortisol and improving memory. A study from the University of California, Santa Barbara found that just 2 weeks of mindfulness training significantly improved working memory capacity and GRE reading comprehension scores in a group of undergraduate students. The practice trains your brain to stay focused and resist distraction, which are prerequisites for encoding anything into memory in the first place. There is one final technique that ties everything together, and it goes by the name of elaborative encoding. This means connecting new information to things you already know. When you learn something new, your brain searches for existing neural networks to attach it to. The more connections you create, the more retrieval pathways exist, and the easier it becomes to access that memory later. This is why analogies, stories, and examples are so much easier to remember than raw facts. The more meaning you assign to information, the more deeply it is encoded. Ask yourself, when you encounter something new, how does this connect to something I already understand? The science of memory improvement is not a mystery reserved for academics. It is a set of practical, proven, accessible tools that anyone can begin using today. Sleep deeply and consistently. Space out your review sessions. Test yourself instead of rereading. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Brain Boost Academy for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.